The following PharmaEssentia podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and cannot be considered as medical advice. Please speak to a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, Kay.
And hello, listeners.
And viewers.
Podcast consumers.
Welcome back to the MPN Podcast, Stories from the Marrow.
A podcast about polycythemia vera and essential thrombocythemia.
Brought to you by PharmaEssentia.
Thank you, PharmaEssentia. Last episode, we had a fantastic time talking with Dr. Hunter, who gave us a rundown of the essentials of essential thrombocythemia, or ET. Today, we're going to be talking with our first guest.
Actually, we've had a ton of guests on this show. Where have you been?
Our first guest living with essential thrombocythemia.
Oh, great. I've been looking forward to this. Who are they?
I am Raqueal. I currently reside in Coolidge, Arizona, originally from Vegas. I moved out of Vegas in 2014, moved over to North Dakota, started my law enforcement career there, stayed there for about 4 years, transferred over to Arizona Federal, and I have been here since 2019. 33, I have 2 kids, 12-year-old, a 4-year-old. I currently work in tech, pretty big tech company at the moment.
Nice to meet you, Raqueal.
We are going to hear more from Raqueal about her journey with essential thrombocythemia and how she learned to be her own advocate right after this quick break.
So, you're learning about myeloproliferative neoplasms on the MPN Pod, Stories from the Marrow.
Now take the next steps on your journey with Piece Together MPN. Whether you're living with essential thrombocythemia or polycythemia vera, piecetogethermpn.com can help you learn about your options, speak up, and make informed long-term decisions, from understanding test results to advocating for yourself at every appointment. Check out piecetogethermpn.com to learn more. And we're back.
Thanks for sticking around. Kay, before we get too deep into the story, I think it might be helpful to recap what we learned last episode about ET.
You are absolutely right. You know I love a recap, a review, a do-over.
All right. So in our last episode, we had Dr. Anthony Hunter answer the question, what exactly is essential thrombocythemia?
If you recall, polycythemia vera is categorized by the overproduction of all 3 types of blood cells.
Red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets.
Within your bone marrow.
Hence the stories from the marrow.
And this is most commonly due to a mutation on the JAK2 gene.
Now, what about essential thrombocythemia?
ET is a similar overproduction of blood cells within the bone marrow.
Hence why we didn't have to change that part of our title, Stories from the Marrow.
While in ET, you're seeing an overproduction of your platelets. However, your other blood cell counts, like your white blood cells in particular, can be elevated and should also be monitored. Like PV, ET is caused by a genetic mutation and is considered a myeloproliferative neoplasm.
Meaning, like PV, it's a rare chronic blood cancer.
Exactly.
Fantastic recap, Kay.
Ready to hear about Raqueal?
Absolutely.
So, in reference to, my background, as I mentioned before, a little bit of law enforcement, I started in juvenile probation, transitioned over to the adult jail, and then did a little bit of work there, worked with a lot of the individuals who struggled with addiction. When I transferred over to the federal prison, things were a little bit different. There was just so many things going on, and you can imagine so many things going on in the background, right? Like a lot of craziness, to be honest, a lot of chaos, right? I switched over to court security. That was a little bit more lighter for me. You still had those, individuals that were battling substance abuse coming in and out of court. They weren't really leaving with the answers that they hoped they were leaving with, and then stayed there for about, I would say maybe give or take 8 or 9 months. And then that's when I switched to investigations with the tech company. Stayed in investigations for about 1.5 years, and then I transferred over to our quality assurance, where I am now an analyst. So it's a lot lighter now. Like, I'm a lot happier. I'm not in the stressful environments anymore, especially dealing with, the diagnosis.
Wow, what a journey. We haven't even started the quote-unquote journey of her diagnosis story. I like her already, though. Changing jobs can be difficult, but it's so important to mitigate stress from the workplace.
True, we've talked about the impact of stress on your health and the importance of mental health maintenance while living with a rare diagnosis in previous episodes. Stress reduction is a major tenet in any healthy lifestyle, but it's particularly important when you also have to deal with the stress of living with a rare disease.
I'm happy to hear Raqueal was able to find a position that she felt more comfortable in, especially as she navigated her diagnosis.
Speaking of her diagnosis, let's get into it. Like many other patients, Raquel was first made aware of her elevated platelet levels during an unrelated appointment.
I was pregnant. I was about 5 months pregnant. I had to go, and this was in 2013. I had to go in for my glucose testing. And once I did my glucose, they did the blood work shortly after. My OBGYN noticed that my platelet levels were elevated. And at that time, they were about maybe 498, give or take. And the range is 150 to 450, I believe. So she was just a little concerned, and she mentioned that it may have been just iron deficiency or something like that. So she prescribed me a couple of iron medication, and then I ended up going back and had to have blood work done again, and they continuously, rose a little bit. So she, mentioned a little bit of going to hematology to see if I can get a little bit more answers. So she wanted me to go and check it out to make sure everything was okay.
So Raquel's platelets were slightly elevated, just out of that range of 150,000 to 450,000 platelets per microliter of blood.
After that, I didn't really, follow up much because I just didn't really have a lot of answers. I didn't really know what to do. And at that time, I was like 21, right? Like, I didn't really have anybody to communicate with in reference to this. Nobody really knew what this was in the background, and even my parents.
That makes total sense to me. How would you know it was urgent, especially if your doctor isn't communicating the urgency? And especially when you're a new mom, you have so many other things to worry about.
Exactly. This is where self-advocacy really comes into play. A lot of us aren't taught to urgently advocate for ourselves, to prioritize our own health, even though that can make all the difference in receiving an earlier diagnosis.
So Raquel wasn't really adequately informed on what it meant to have a high platelet count by her doctor. So what happened next?
So once I moved out of Vegas, I left in 2014. I ended up going to a hematologist in North Dakota. So we talked about a little bit of what was noted prior to me coming over to North Dakota. She initially prescribed me, the iron medicine and stuff like that. That wasn't doing anything, and platelets had gotten higher at that point. We were around 600, 700 at that point. So the hematologist wanted to, explore the idea of a bone marrow biopsy. Because I wasn't really aware. Again, I was really young and not necessarily, I will say I own my role in not being able to accept that there was something wrong, right? So I didn't follow up until 2016. Went through with the bone marrow biopsy.
So Raquel's levels have elevated from around 490 to 600, 700,000, when the upper limit of her platelet range was 450,000. We're seeing some significant elevation over the course of a few years.
And Raquel puts off the bone marrow biopsy, which again, I totally understand. We don't talk about it enough, but navigating the healthcare system is terrifying, and it's natural to want to avoid it altogether.
Sure, this is where a patient's doctor can step in with thorough communication, stressing the importance of testing and early detection. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, this vital communication and education doesn't happen, like in Raquel's case, which is why self-advocacy and self-education are so important. But if you feel like you aren't being heard by your doctor or you aren't receiving adequate education from your doctor, know you aren't alone, and you can always seek a second opinion.
So Raquel did end up getting her bone marrow biopsy in 2016. What were the results?
Once the results came back, the results were JAK2 positive. At that time, she didn't really know what that meant. So I'm asking questions like, what do I do? Like, is there anything I can do do I need to change my diet? Like, do I need to take more of something? Do I need to take less of something? Is there something that I need to incorporate? And she couldn't give me any answers. So that also led up to me not following up because I don't know still, right? And again, at that time, I didn't really have a voice. I had a voice, but not a voice in reference to being able to know what questions to ask in reference to this, right?
That voice Raquel is talking about, That's self-advocacy, and as Raquel came to learn, it would be critical in her journey to her ET diagnosis.
Yeah, I'm bummed to hear that Raquel's first physician didn't have enough information to make her feel like she was being heard and taken care of.
So she had me on a schedule where I had to go back every 6 months. We did lab work to make sure, to see where my numbers were, what we needed to do, if there was something that we needed to change and stuff like that. During those appointments, I have to say they were very much transactional versus collaborative. And that is what drove the lack of return, right? Like, there is nothing you can tell me. You're not telling me what I need to take. You're not telling me what I need to do. You're just telling me come back in 6 months and we'll do labs. That's not enough for me, right? So that is a lot of why there was inconsistency in, my appointments and trying to figure out what was going on. Later on, for the greater part of my journey, that's been the dynamic, right? The bedside manner. You're in there for 30 minutes and they're telling you, okay, we'll just take your baby aspirin twice a day and then we'll revisit 6 months.
So many of our guests have been disappointed by that watch and wait approach. They want something more proactive. They want more education on their disease, as well as the associated risks, side effects, and treatment options. I would too.
Many doctors, like Raquel's, aren't providing the education that their MPN patients needed, which is why we see so many of our guests engaging in online communities. Like many of our other guests, Raquel got proactive about her health.
I just did a little bit of research on my own, joining some of the groups on Facebook to see if anybody else was having the experience I was having. A lot of the issue too is the demographic. And if we're being honest, right, I'm a minority. I'm very well aware of that. I got a new specialist in February and she's great. She's amazing. She, sees everything for what it is. She validates my concerns.
I am so glad Raquel found a specialist that was a better fit for her. This is a good reminder that you could and should seek a second opinion if you feel like your concerns about your health or your treatment plan aren't being taken seriously, because ET is rare. It is so helpful to get a second opinion from an MPN specialist who is more current on the latest research, treatment, and risks.
All of those things we mentioned earlier that a patient would want from their healthcare team, making a specialist much more equipped to work with you to find the best personalized treatment plan for proactive disease management. Having a doctor that was more aligned with Raquel made all the difference in her healthcare journey.
I found a Black woman and she knows trauma, she knows lack of support. She knows what we deal with on a day-to-day basis from childhood to, navigating adulthood. So it was important for me to look within to figure out, okay, well, maybe I could try this. And the first appointment, when I tell you, and I'll never forget it, the first appointment, I was struggling because being that I didn't have the adequate amount of support in reference to the people who diagnosed me with this, it was hard to even step foot in another office. Like, oh my God, this again? What if she's like this? What if I'm going to experience the same thing? And then I have to go and search again and again and again. But the moment that I walked in, I was already in, a little bit of an emotional state. And she just sat there. And she looked at me and she's like, it's okay. It's cool. Get it out. I'm here to support. If you have any questions, let me know. Let me know how we can get, things situated for you. And in that moment, I realized that was what I needed a long time ago.
That's incredible. And I'm sure it allowed Raquel to open up more, ask more questions about her diagnosis, and understand the significance of the situation, right?
She asked what my struggles were, what struggles I had. She asked what questions I had. She asked me if there was any confusion surrounding the diagnosis or what, why. And she explained, I need you to start paying attention to everything that you're feeling, right? Don't minimize if you are feeling a little something in your leg when you're already having a little bit of leg pain. If it's something different, note it. If you're having any bleeding in your gums, note it. Immediately reach out.
I want to highlight that advice. Don't minimize what you're feeling. Start paying attention to all of it and reach out to your healthcare team if you notice any changes, even if you might think they're insignificant.
What a total 180. Having a doctor who takes your concerns seriously, who respects you, who takes the time to inform you about your diagnosis and fields all of your questions really does change everything. Now your healthcare can be a collaboration, something you can actually participate in.
And I think another thing, with everything previous to finding this specialist, I went in with expectations that they knew what to do with this. They knew how to answer my questions. They knew how to, because they were a doctor, right? But at the end of the day, if you don't really have a lot of knowledge, or if you don't have a lot of, if you haven't done a lot of research or whatever the case may be in reference to this, then how can I expect you to be able to provide me the support that I need in these appointments? So it took a lot of like accepting that, hey, we are both learning this together and we got to kind of figure it out together along the lines.
So, Raquel really took the reins and figured out how to advocate for herself. She found a specialist, and together they collaborated on research and decision making.
That really was quite a journey. I'm curious, when did Raquel first learn that ET was a cancer? So many of our guests were caught off guard by that part of the MPN diagnosis.
The characterization for the greater part of the journey was just a blood disorder. And then doing much of the research, I realized this is essentially cancer, and nobody realizes this. And it hit a little bit harder for me knowing that, because it's like you can fix it, right, to a certain extent. It definitely changed the perspective for me, knowing that this was characterized as a blood disorder versus a cancer. I feel like if it was mentioned in some of the appointments, majority of the appointments, then I would have taken it seriously a long time ago.
I can't imagine finding out that your blood disorder diagnosis is actually a cancer from your own research.
And Raquel says it herself. That lack of communication from her doctors definitely slowed her diagnosis journey. How would you know to pursue more proactive treatment if no one is communicating to you how serious the situation is or what the long-term risks are?
Nobody explained to me what the risks were. They didn't explain any, this would lead up to a stroke. This would lead up to, blood clots. This would lead up to, we talked a little bit about like blood clots, but in reference to the deeper level, like what do I need to know in reference to blood clots? What are the symptoms? Like, what do I need to look for? What do I need to look for in reference to stroke? What do I need to look for in reference to heart attack and stuff like that? So I feel like if that was all, mentioned or even communicated with me in my earlier appointments, again, I would have been so much more eager to follow up and, make sure I was taking care of myself to the best of my ability.
If Raquel could go back in time, what other kinds of questions would she ask? I feel like the answer to that would be so helpful for our listeners who may be at the beginning of their diagnosis journey.
What does the numbers look like? What number do I need to get to? What specific number do I need to get to before we are extremely concerned? Is there anything I can do? So many things that could have been communicated to me, right? And again, I own my role in this too, because a part of it was acceptance, but also just not having the knowledge, right?
So we've discussed Raquel's journey to diagnosis. Now I'd like to get into the day-to-day of living with ET. It's something we haven't discussed before.
Yeah. What are the symptoms that Raquel is experiencing? Does it affect her daily life?
I have to preface by saying that I've always been a go-getter, right? Ambitious and making sure that, I'm taken care of, especially because I have kids who are watching, right? Having to keep going, right? It's hard. It's extremely hard. Some days I can't even get up. Some days, my body is extremely heavy to where you don't want to do anything. You're so exhausted. You don't have the capacity to even hold conversations. You don't have the capacity to run around with my 4-year-old who has this high energy, I have to get up at 6. No, I get up about 5:30, get myself together. I got to clock in by 6 and I work from home. So it works out, right? Previous to working from home, I had to go into office Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And my commute was 56 minutes there and back. Getting there is okay. I'm getting up 3:45 in the morning, getting myself together, leaving the house about 4:45, make it to work about 5:30, just so I can get my tea and stuff situated, get my laptop situated. By the third day that I had to be in office, completely depleted. And I've had to, call off every single week on a Thursday because I just can't do it. With the commute, for the most part, I try and do a little bit of time management, right? Okay, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we can do this. Tuesdays and Thursdays, absolutely leave me alone. I can't even fathom getting up to do whatever you want me to do. And I'm not talking about cooking and cleaning and the basic needs, for my kids. It's just essentially, I can't be outside in the sun all day. It's just draining. I'm already extremely drained. I'm exhausted. So I think that's the biggest thing.
What Raqueal is describing here goes way beyond just being tired.
Right. Fatigue is one of the most challenging symptoms to explain and understand because it's not always visible. It's easy to brush off, and often it's not brought up with the doctor, even when it should be. Like Raqueal said earlier, it's important to bring up everything you're feeling in your doctor's appointments. Don't minimize your symptoms. Sharing these day-to-day impacts can help the care teams better understand your lived experiences and guide your treatment decisions.
Another symptom that I've just realized is a symptom based off of my new specialist is it's almost like restless leg syndrome. But I don't know if it's like characterized as bone pain because it's essentially like lower legs, right? So it's extremely hard to kind of deal with that, right? Because and I have stairs in my house, going up and down the stairs on a day-to-day basis and having to, kind of sit with that.
So we've heard about her physical side effects. Our guests have often expressed feelings of being dismissed or misunderstood, and that can have a negative impact on someone's mental health.
We asked Raqueal about that, specifically about the invisibility of the diagnosis.
Invisibility? What do you mean?
Well, with MPNs like PV and ET, you can't really see it. You don't really look like what we imagine when we imagine someone with cancer.
Got it. You may look fine, but still be dealing with significant day-to-day symptoms that can have a huge impact on your life.
And frequently, this invisibility results in dismissal and a feeling of isolation.
This is one of the biggest things. I think the greater part of this is the isolation. Because I am able to actively get up, even the days that I can't, right? Because I'm able to get up, because I'm walking, because I still have hair, because I still have, everything going on. Like, I know how to put myself together. I know how to get dressed and stuff. People don't see the inside of things, right? Like, there's so much going on in reference to all of this. And you can absolutely say, hey, I'm just tired. There's nothing that I can do. There's nothing that I can say. You can't see it because you obviously, right? Like I'm a human being, right? Like with everything that isn't characterized with cancer. So it's hard. It's extremely hard, especially when you are dismissed, when you're communicating what's actively going on, because I don't look like I'm sick or anything on the outside. I think the invisibility is one of the things that I struggle with the most in reference to this, and invisibility with my family and, some of the people that I kind of had in my circle that didn't really know that I was dealing with this. And I could have absolutely communicated this entire thing, but not having the safe spaces to be able to do so is what drove the isolation, right? So, again, I think that this is the hardest part about it all. Emotions being dismissed even in the doctor's appointments, right? Like you can express like, I'm having this symptom or I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that, but because they don't see it on the outside, it's, oh, let's minimize it.
Raqueal mentioned not having a safe space to communicate. She didn't really confide in her family. With our previous guests, we've talked about the importance of having a support system. I'm wondering if Raqueal has been able to open up at all, if she has people she can trust now to discuss her diagnosis with.
I will tell you, as of recent, I have been so much more open with this. I hid for quite a while, such a long time. I hid from it, and again, this is going back to acceptance, right? I'm pretty open, especially when it comes to my appointments and stuff. They're pretty knowledgeable of like what I go in, what questions I ask, and what the plan is, right? The long-term plan, like what we have solidified at this point. I don't communicate the fatigue levels, right? Like I don't communicate the exhaustion because I'm not one to allow this to like hold me down. This is just in reference to privacy. So I just don't feel like it's necessary for me to, effectively communicate every single aspect of what this journey is.
Choosing what to communicate and to whom you communicate with is entirely your own decision. Here are some other ways Raqueal seeks support.
I journal a lot. I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of reading books. My mom recently, the support group that I'm on Facebook, I go there, just to kind of read everybody else's experiences and, what they have going on. And I'll make a post in there, every now and again, but it's not anything like immediately consistent. The greater part is me being able to write everything down and we moving on.
Well, I'm glad to hear that Facebook is a good tool for people living with ET, just like it is for our friends living with PV. Kay, Raqueal has been such a phenomenal guest. I'm really glad she was available to be our introduction to the lived experience of ET. I'm wondering if she has any last pieces of advice for our listeners who might be in a similar situation to hers.
Speak up. Absolutely speak up. Even if you don't feel comfortable, it's okay. The biggest thing is knowing that this is what you have to live with on a day-to-day basis. It's never going to go away. Accept your diagnosis and do what you need to do to advocate for yourself. Nobody else is going to advocate for you. Nobody's going to give you the space to sit in. You have to create that own space for yourself. Even when it gets uncomfortable, even when the tears are flowing, absolutely advocate. Again, I think the biggest thing is, obviously you have to have, a team that is going to absolutely listen to every single gripe and complaint and all of that. And I know that it takes a lot of, it's emotional exhausting for that too, but we are patients too that have to deal with this. So again, creating your own safe space to be able to have the courage, to be able to have enough of, emotional intelligence to speak up, especially when it comes to this.
That's great advice. I'm glad Raqueal has found her voice and advocates for herself now.
Agreed. I also just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, Raqueal. It is not easy to open up, but each time a story like this is shared, there's a greater chance for other people to learn from it, meaning they might not have to experience the same challenges.
It's so true. People like Raqueal are called lived experience experts for a reason. They really are experts on their experience and their insights are invaluable.
So again, thanks, Raqueal.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in.
This has been another fantastic episode of the MPN Pod, Stories from the Marrow. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
The MPN Pod, Stories from the Marrow, is produced by Believe Limited and Bloodstream Media and made possible thanks to our sponsor, PharmaEssentia. The MPN Pod is hosted by me, Kay Vermeil, and my co-host, Josh Bragg. If you like the show, please share it with anyone for whom it might make a difference, and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'll see you next time.